Hey everybody, Rachel here with Givebutter. Thanks for joining for another success story from the Givebutter community. Today we are featuring Wild Rose. You might recognize the name because we featured this as a campaign we love on our site as well as a good newsletter. Recently, Wild Rose raised over $352,000, and that's over $2,000 their fundraising goal. With a very special team fundraising aspect. I think you're really gonna love hearing more about this one. I have two of their leaders here with me to share how Wild Rose created a friendly sense of competition within their community. They're also going to tell us what made them turn to Givebutter for fundraising, as well as tips, tricks, and lessons learned along the way. Thank you both so much for joining to share your story with the Givebutter community.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So to start, why don't you both introduce yourself and your roles and what Wild Rose is all about?
Okay, I'm Dikla Weitzner. I'm the director of Moshava of Wild Rose. We are a modern Orthodox residential camp in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. And again, thanks for having us.
I'm Jen Koplow, and I'm the assistant director at Moshava of Wild Rose. We're so happy to be here today and really proud of all we accomplished in our fundraising goals.
You definitely should be. I mean, we're so excited to be featuring your story. At some point, I'm definitely going to share your beautiful campaign page so everybody who's following along can get the visual. But let's start with the backstory. What led to the buildup of this campaign? COVID-19 relief, I know, is a huge part of your story and what led up to your annual campaign being presented in this way on Givebutter. So if you could just walk us back to the beginning, I don't know, maybe 5-6 months ago to when the wheels were turning for this campaign.
Either of us could. If we go back to March, when the pandemic really hit, we really hit a mode of we were really trying to make camp happen. We really did everything that we could to run a summer, all the while knowing that it was a strong possibility that we would not be able to run the summer. I think close to 90% of residential camps in the US actually did not end up running. Well, Wisconsin didn't mandate us not to run. The board and the medical committee ultimately decided that this was not the summer to be able to run. And our camp has 81 years of history. So this was the first summer in 81 years that there would be no camp. And that was really difficult. Just in general, emotionally, and for our alumni, for our families, obviously for our campers, for our staff, for us, it was heartbreaking. It was really, really tough. And all the while knowing that we had to run our annual campaign regardless, we kind of tried to figure out for a little while whether we're going, what exactly we're going to do with this campaign, and exactly when we're going to do it. And as soon as we canceled, we realized that we had to refund our parents their money. We were very, very open from the beginning of the pandemic that if we do not have camp, we will offer 100% refunds. And I'm gonna let Jen keep talking too, but I don't want to say everything. But that's when we decided to kind of go with this type of campaign. Again, part of it was annual in general, and specifically for this summer, we felt we needed to hit a much larger target. Mm-hmm. I'm going to let Jen talk.
Sure. So, I mean, I think you covered a lot. I think the plan for us was really try to find a platform that would bring in our alumni, bring in our donor base who are not necessarily alumni, but just friends of camp, and appeal to our parents and, current families, as well as we are an established camp in Wisconsin, but a lot of our base is in Chicago, grew up here, grew up going to the camp. And so there are a lot of people who care about the camp and the livelihood of the camp and the success of the camp. And we wanted to make sure we could find a way, not just in our annual campaign where we're calling people that we know and saying, hey, we would love you to contribute to the camp, but really get feelers out there, reaching people who just care enough about the camp to want it to stay and continue to grow.
Yeah, so what made you turn to Givebutter to pull that off?
So there are a lot of platforms out there. I wouldn't say either of us are super familiar with so many of them. So I started looking for different kinds of campaign platforms that I liked. Personally, I prefer when I give my own donations platform that allows me to like throw in PayPal or Venmo, something really simple and easy that I don't have to start typing all my billing information and everything like that. So on my like short priority list, that was one of them, an easy way to pay, because I do think it eases a person into actually hitting submit when all is said and done. I wanted a platform that could, that's very user-friendly, appealing, that we could put a video on. We had like a really great video that we made last summer in camp, and once we decided that camp was not going to be running this summer, we really wanted to create a video for camp families to still kind of feel what camp is all about and pull at their heartstrings. And we were able to come up with a video, and we wanted to be able to show that on the platform. And then the final thing is we have alumni, and every year there's a grade. Each grade is considered a kind of like a group, and they have a name. And so based on essentially the year you're born, you are in a certain, it's called ADA in this grouping.
Shave it.
Shave it, sorry. And so in terms of the Shave It, we really wanted to pull in alumni that way. And we thought if we created sort of a color war, which obviously was not happening this summer, it would be a great way to still connect with everybody, and potentially even do a little, friendly competition to help increase the amount of funds we can bring in.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so people can see some of the things that you were highlighting that also stood out to us. You were mentioning that you're able to accept donations via digital wallets, which I'd be curious to know if you have an idea of how many folks were utilizing that donated. But if you just click donate here, go next, leave a message. Simple, you can click, and it's literally 3 clicks and you're done, and you donated, and you joined maybe a team as well if you're participating in the color wars that you just mentioned. So yeah, it's user friendly. You're able to connect quickly with digital wallets, and then you're also mentioning that you utilize peer-to-peer or team fundraising, which I thought was one of the most successful aspects when I looked at your campaign, because you have to click show more just dozens and dozens of times to reach the amount of teams that were participating, which I thought was so impressive.
And people, it's the year, right? Like Jen said, it's year by year. So we have many years of history.
Exactly. And I thought it showed that off so well when you looked at the campaign. A lot of times when you look at team fundraisers, you'll notice that only a few teams are successful, but the strategy that you came up with included everyone. Everyone had a team to be a part of, and that sometimes that can be totally missed, and you can look at a team and think, well, I don't belong. I'm not necessarily part of this group or that group, so do I just give individually? But you made a way for a seat at the table for everyone to give, and I thought that was so smart. And then you also mentioned your beautiful video, and I'm actually just going to play a couple of seconds here of it because it is so beautiful. Listen, I didn't go to camp and grow up with these, but I wish I did. When I watched this, I was like, I want to sing and participate. It was beautiful. And then as you keep going on throughout the campaign page, you have a very brief and concise story and message. You share directly how your funds are going to be distributed. It's very clear and transparent, which is really important to donors. And then you have beautiful visual here of all the teams participating, a message from you, and as well as others who are supporting. So I just thought your page, the way you laid it out was really user-friendly. Is there anything that, as I'm walking through this, that maybe you wanted to share in terms of strategy or tips and tricks as you're looking at it that stand out to you?
Well, I think for people who are doing this in the future, I think it was definitely helpful we started the process with some messages. And I think if you have no messages and you launch your campaign, some people are intimidated. They don't want to be the first one to write a message, things like that. So I think if you have a couple donors that you can call and ask them to make the donations and write something, it goes a long way to helping promote the message portion. So I would suggest that.
Did you have a goal in mind? Like, because a lot of times we'll refer to those as lead gifts. Did you have a certain number of messages that you wanted to send, or lead gifts that you felt like you needed to get out there? Or was it just kind of like, here's our loyal few, we're going to reach out and hopefully we'll get the ball rolling?
We had a donor list that we went to. Like, we did have a list of people that we were calling and referring to, and we also had a fundraising committee. And you know, in the world of virtual world, we had a WhatsApp group that was very active, and people were
nice,
asking people and reaching out. And we had a very, I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking, but we had a very strong social media campaign to back this. Which made a huge difference. I also actually wanted to mention that one of your features is when someone makes a donation, they have the ability to then share it onto Facebook and show who donated, which is a fantastic feature, because then other people were able to see that this person just gave to this, you know, cause this Givebutter campaign, and then they were able to also click on it and also donate. Well, I think that the team feature, I think it would be great if every team that you talked about above, like if you'd be able to click on each one and show everyone who supported a camp friend. Like if that would have been like, that's one thing that a few people had mentioned to us, like through the campaign, that they would have loved to see everyone from their team, from their year, you know, on one list. But people were still really kind of into it and constantly watching and looking. And again, on social media, you are able to take each team and like it's givebutter.com Wild Rose / and then that team. So we were able to also kind of encourage, like, I'm, you know, Shevet Achdut. So I was able to kind of on my campaigns, I used the link to my team versus just the overall social media campaign, so that my team would get more donations. And as Jen said, we made it into a color war. Like, we tried to have, like, you know, levels of like who's going to win this in this round and this part of it.
Mm-hmm. The other feature that I think is really important to mention that we did utilize is the ability for staff to go in on the back end of the system and add checks or, you know, commitments from people who don't have the time to go on the computer, or our, you know, some of our older crowd, you know, alumni who aren't as computer savvy or tech savvy. We were able to input the information for them, which made it so much easier. So I think that's really important to know that that's accessible.
Definitely. Knowing that your campaign was also a COVID-19 relief fund, there are, I'm sure, tons who are following along right now that may also be in a similar place. And running a COVID-19 relief fund is quite different than running just a normal campaign, right? So I'd love to know how that maybe had changed your messaging or strategy. How different was running a COVID-19 relief campaign for you?
It's funny because beforehand I thought it would be a tougher campaign. Like, I was like, I was gung-ho about running camp, and I really thought that like it wouldn't work. But unfortunately, because of the way the world is, I think people understand that it's like everyone is going through these really tough times. And I think that if you have an organization that people believe in, and if it's a place that people cherish, they want to make sure that it continues to succeed. And I think that was a big part of this campaign. We had tons, and I mean tons, of alumni that have not given in years or maybe even ever, who seemed to really take to this campaign. As soon as we sent it out, we sent out an email. We immediately just got, without even asking, we just, you know, we had the campaign, click on, and we immediately got donations. It was honestly like something that I'm really proud to be a part of. So I think that you have to be sensitive to what a difficult time it is, but I've actually heard this from a few fundraisers. Don't be afraid to ask. Right. Even in these tough times, that's one thing we definitely learned from this campaign. If you don't ask, you don't know. And no one's going to say to you, how dare you ask? Worst comes to worst, they don't give, or they give less. Mm-hmm. But most people we asked love camp and wanted to make sure to continue its success for the future. and they gave, and it was amazing.
I think the other thing to add is when we went into this, you know, we started this maybe a week after we canceled camp, and we were in not a good place emotionally ourselves. And I think we were personally challenged of, we don't want to make this like a sad, negative campaign, right? If you don't give, like, we're shutting our doors, anything like that. It's the opposite. This is like of hope for the future. And we wanted to figure out, how do we make this annual campaign where people understand we're trying to make it better for the future, not like salvage what we had in the past. And I think taking this like color war competition, like we tried to make it more positive than negative. And I think that also spoke to people in terms of them feeling more connected to the campaign.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's something that we're seeing on Givebutter. The campaigns that are most successful with COVID-19 relief are humanizing their campaigns. So it's walking that tension of acknowledging the pain and the difficulty and the grief while simultaneously having the hope for the future, and getting people to be a part of that full story with a sense of community. So I think that's something that you all did brilliantly, and anybody who's following along, we're definitely going to link to this campaign so you can play around with it. You can watch all the videos, take a look at the supporter feed. I didn't even mention—
donate if you want.
Yeah, donate if you want. There are tons of beautiful messages that I didn't even get to point out on your supporter feed that people were really engaged with, as well as team fundraising pages that you can also personalize and add in your own message apart from the overall campaign page. So there's so much more that we could talk about and share, I'm sure. But
a quick shout out to the Givebutter team, because setting up those shavettes, there were a lot of them, and it seemed really overwhelming to me. And when I chat boxed you guys, within like a minute, I had help, and you guys set it up on your end, which was amazing. And I was not expecting that. And it's great for people to know that there's really a support team on the back end of that.
It continued throughout the campaign, because I was really running the campaign part, and there were often just little questions. Can I change this person? Whatever it was. And it was the same thing. I was able to reach them quickly and, you know, get support. And there was always sort of someone there to back me, which was really helpful.
Oh, so happy to hear that. Thank you so much for saying that. We are so proud of you in this beautiful campaign. Thank you for using Givebutter, letting us share your inspiring success story today. I know there's tons of fundraisers who are going to watch this and be really inspired. So thank you so much for joining us today.
We were happy to. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to, you know, talk about our camp that we love so much.
Thank you. And for everybody who is following along, please remember to like, share, subscribe to Givebutter's YouTube channel. And you guys, if there's questions that I didn't ask and you want to ask them, comment below. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. We'll see. Thank you so much again, everybody, for joining. We will see you next week for another success story. Take care.